Colorado is an excellent location to call home for those looking for a bit more space and some of that Colorado country, but also close enough to civilization so you're not so isolated from the rest of the world. But even though this town is gorgeous and might be your next place to call home, what's wrong with it? We'll cover the pros definitely, but pay close attention to the cons. They may be the reason you actually say no thanks. So I just mentioned that Berthoud offers a more rural Colorado experience. This is due to its excellent location. It's a town in northern Colorado with a population just barely over 14,000 residents. So definitely a small town, but it's also just south of Loveland, Colorado, only about 10 minutes away, which is why Berthoud's location is so incredible. It's only 10 minutes away from a city of 80,000 people, but when you're in the town itself, it almost feels like you're out in deep rural Colorado, especially when you're looking at all the rural properties on the western side, which I'll talk about in a second. So you get the peace and quiet and a bit of distance from built-up cities, but you're not too far away. And if you need to get into Loveland or even Fort Collins just a half an hour north, it's doable. It's the perfect blend. Now, Berthoud's location can be a huge pro, especially for those looking for rural living. But for those looking to be close to Denver, not so much. This is really a specific con, but since Denver is the main city of Colorado, and about 50% of all Colorado residents live within the metropolitan area, as a result, the capital is a huge hub for business, education, arts, food, etc. And Berthoud is far from the city, about an hour drive excluding traffic. So it does not serve at all as a good commuter town if you're moving with Denver in mind. There are dozens of suburbs closer to the city that I cover, both on the northern and southern sides, that can be excellent options and provide much smaller commute times. Traffic itself is insane the closer you get to Denver, so commuting from Berthoud is just not sustainable. But in all, choose Berthoud because you'd much rather be far from Denver rather than close. Now, before I dive back into more pros and cons of Berthoud, if you've been thinking about a move to Colorado or have specific questions about Berthoud or any of the locations I just mentioned, reach out to me. I speak with home buyers like you every week who are planning a move to the state, and they're trying to get as much information about their interested suburbs as possible. My information is pinned below. Send me an email or schedule a time to talk. I'd love to help you in this process and answer any questions you got. But let's get back to Berthoud. Now, actually on par with being far from Denver is that Berthoud has a very affordable housing price. Within context, number one for Colorado, specifically compared to the Denver metro area, and then number two for properties localized in the actual town area. The rural properties are a different story, and I'll cover that in a second. But if you're moving into the main part of town, the properties here are around the $550,000 to $650,000 mark, with a median price of around $622,000. Now, I say affordable, right? So the city of Denver's median home price is $595,000. However, when we look at the median size of these homes, they're only about 1,900 square feet. In Berthoud, the median size of properties here is around 2,850 square feet. So Berthoud homes are about 1,000 square feet larger than Denver. That is a huge difference for a cost variation of $27,000. Now, switching back to the cons, let's actually highlight a negative to Berthoud's location. As I mentioned before, it's a small town of around 14,000 people, right? So the con is that Berthoud, being a small town, doesn't have a lot of amenities or options, whether it's shopping, restaurants, nightlife scene, etc. A lot of the main focus on this front will be along Mountain Ave, which is the main street in town. There's a quaint strip there that does give Berthoud its classic small town feel. However, it's small. For some, that might not be much of a deal breaker, but if you're looking for a place that's actually built up, it might be too small. Be prepared to do most of the driving up to Loveland and Fort Collins for a lot of things, which is actually a silver lining because Loveland is only 10 minutes away. It's not an egregious drive and can be relatively unnoticeable every time you have to leave town to do some serious shopping. But if we're talking within the town limits of Berthoud itself, it's severely lacking. And now finally, the last pro we're going to talk about today is Berthoud's rural homes. On the west side of town, all the way to and even into the Front Range, there are dozens of rural properties that sit on various plots of land. If you're looking for some rural living, this can be a terrific option. Not only because it's a lot more peaceful and quiet than, let's say, a more built up suburb, but also because you have beautiful views year-round of the Front Range. It is breathtaking here. And these open rural properties extend all the way down to Longmont in the south, about 20 minutes away, and then up north into Loveland. A lot of the western sides of these towns have tons of rural properties that can sit along this corridor, and as I mentioned, into the foothills of the Rockies. Yet with this, comically, the last con of today is Berthoud's rural homes. Now why? Because as you can probably expect, the price of these properties are not in line with the price of the homes within the main town of Berthoud. The home prices, I'd say, are closer to the $900,000 mark on the low end, but up to a few million on the high end. Now, keep this in mind though. The spread of home types, home size, and lot size is going to vary tremendously here. So there could be a $1.9 million property with 6,000 square feet on 3 acres, or a smaller property that sits on 20 acres designed for horses. So the affordability here does not compare to the main part of town. In town, you're gonna find much more suburban style living, and as a result, reasonable affordability. Out in the rural section, it's variable and property specific, and can be out of a lot of people's price range, either financially or just emotionally. Not sure if you're in the market for 20 acres. So purchasing a property out here is gonna be very context specific. So what did you think? Is Berthoud right for you? It might have been. If so, check out another video of mine that talks a bit more about the town. But if you're considering other places, I recommend looking north to Loveland. It's more built up, the home prices there are actually even more affordable than Berthoud, so it might be a great fit. This is Life on the Front Range, I'll see you there.